Hello, welcome everyone. We're going to give a minute and a half to make sure people join in and settle. We'll begin soon. Thank you. All right. I think we see folks settling in. Let's just begin. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you might be. Hope you're all doing well, keeping safe and sane. Today is our 10th session in the series of our e-learning webinar. I want to thank you all for being a consistent supporter of this effort. We welcome your participation, but also the feedbacks you're giving us. Thank you for that. As you see, we are trying a new platform today to make sure that you can take the survey after this so that we can understand your streaming experience and of course, your feedback on the content. As always, we are recording the session and you'll have access to the session on demand on our YouTube channel as well. We are now moving forward with once a week format for the month of May and June. Again, every Thursday, 11 to 12, you will see a session here. We will send you the invitation to the session on the Monday of the week. So you'll have that piece as well. As always, you will see at the bottom a Q&A. Please feel free to ask questions. You can ask as you go. We will answer at the end of the session. We want to make sure that we take a few questions at the end. Today's session most likely is going to go close to the full hour. We will shoot to actually end it 5 or 10 minutes before that, but not at the cost of not taking questions. So that's a key part of it. Okay. Before I move any further and do the introduction of myself and Marcia here, I do want to emphasize that today's session is going to be a little more data heavy. This code basically sums up a lot of elements of what we are trying to do. Right now, we are sitting on top of a lot of data. I'm sure you're getting emails after emails from a whole bunch of folks, reports after reports, talking about what's happening on this industry, what's happening on the planet in general. So we do want to kind of make sure we present a synthesized version of all these things that you are seeing, what we are seeing as well, and bring it in a way that actually matters, in a way that matters to us as a business, primarily food and beverage business, but more importantly, as individuals who are responsible for taking actions on the data. So that's a key part of it. And I do like this code quite a bit, is ultimately we have to combine data with people who have experience in what they're doing. And which is why I kind of like this code, and I want to push it out here for you guys to see as well. Before we move any further, I think a couple of things that is absolutely important to understand of where are we right now, where are we going forward. But just 1 second real quick. Mm-hmm. sorry about that. We want to make sure that we understand some of the scenarios that we're experiencing right now. And there's a lot going on out there, and there are a lot of perspectives floating around. And some of the key perspectives are primarily around the idea of how are we going to recover. So today you have myself here. You have seen Miten Rathod. You have seen me before on this session, but I also have Marcia. Marcia, you want to quickly do an intro?
Sure. Thank you, Miten. Hello, everybody, for inviting me to join you. I'm Marcia Mogolansky. I'm the Director of Insight for Mintel. We've been following this virus and its spread since it started with a number of trackers and information. I also bring a historical perspective because in my previous incarnation, I was an archaeologist. So dealing with pandemics is something I've been looking at through history and into the present day. So I'm glad to join you. Thank you.
Yes, I'm Miten Rathod. I am the Global Marketing Director for the Flavors and Extract business here at Sensient Flavors. And I want to welcome you on this one. Right? We will show up both on webcam towards the end when we take the Q&A, which is a normal cadence that we are following. So I'm going to shut my camera off for now. Right? So one of the key things that we've been talking about is primarily our understanding of what's actually happening on this planet right now. And there are a lot of perspectives floating around. But I have just some of them here. There's a talk about, okay, I think we're going to go back to how we were before. And let's call the before as January and February. Well, there are a few takers for that. In fact, none. But more importantly, there are also thought processes around are we going to stay where we are? Are we going to be here for the near future? And I think that is also not a perspective that I embrace, because as humans, we are innovators. We like to change, adapt, and make changes. So that's part of it. There are thoughts around V-shaped recovery, which is basically I'm going down this a little bit, but when things get better, we'll just bounce off where we are. We are optimistic as human beings, I think, and I think that perspective is valid. I'm not sure whether that's the way it's going to happen. The last two ones are basically the areas where we believe there is some cadence. The whole element of on and off. Yes, we are right now towards the lower end of it, but we might bounce back again a little bit. Then maybe there's a little downward trends on certain segments, and then so on and so forth. And the other one, which is the last one, which is my most preferred one here, is that we might actually see a much more hockey stick style of recovery. We are down and we'll kind of gradually grow and go back to normal. The length of the normalcy, nobody has an idea how that's going to be, but at least we can see us kind of gradually getting better and better and better and going back to normal, which is, let's just consider the month of January as normal right now. But this is just my perspective here, but how about we go ahead and actually ask you. So we have a quick poll for you, and you will see it right now on your screen. Please go ahead and tell us what you think is going to be the recovery looking like from your perspective. And I'll give you 30 seconds to make your choice. All right, let's see what you say. Well, you see it in front of you. This is unanimous. Our crowdsourced result tells us that a hockey-shaped recovery is something to expect. And I don't want to say I feel vindicated. That's not the point. But it's more about collectively, I think we have an idea how this thing is going to shape into. And we have to understand ourselves, our own experience to guide us through it. Okay. So moving forward, I think just as a very high-level summary, the whole idea of this session is to give you what's the perspective of some of the experts in the industry, Sensient, and some folks who deal with this day in, day out. And we have compiled the top 10 scenarios that any food and beverage company should be actually prepared for. And this is just a very high level a slide that just says that we will be going the behind the scene information of this one, and we will be coming back to the same slide on the top 10 later in the session and talk about some of the implication. But very briefly, affordable indulgence, inspired eating at home, speed to market, supply chain and pricing pressure, the rise in online, things that are made local, the power of retail brands, private label and store brands, personal care items, immunity playing a bigger role, and of course safety, which is we all are experiencing right now. These are the top 10 scenarios that we see, and I want to walk you through of how we have arrived at this one and why these matters. I'm going to share with you historical perspective and primarily from recession that we have experienced that's a decade ago, and what that recession taught us. What are we learning globally from some of the markets who are kind of getting back to normal a little bit. So we have compiled all that for you to walk you through and then bring you back to what we see that is actually happening now and the implications from there. So thinking about the most recent experience that we've all had, recession is the first thing that comes to mind. And when you start looking at some of the data from that time, you see almost all aspects of shopper behaviors were impacted, from my needs and wants changing, where do I go to shop, which is where I'm getting what I need, and more importantly, what am I supposed to categorize as this whole issue of recession was actually happening. We are kind of not too far from that right now. You're in the news right now. You're seeing the unemployment level. In fact, in some state, we're seeing 1 in 4 are unemployed. And the amount of money that is getting pumped in by the federal government to help us stabilize this thing is quite a bit. But when you actually also compare to some previous key economic, macroeconomic indicators from the past, 2001 we had a recession, 2008, and then compared with 2020, you see that there's a color emerging, which is saying primarily that we are. It's not the same like before. There are certain things that are different this time. Primarily, you see the unemployment rate is different, the energy pricing that has collapsed at the same time. But you see something that is very remarkable here, that in the month of March, our consumer confidence was actually pretty good. We felt things are in control. But when I see the score right now, it has dwindled down to 87. So there are a lot of elements that are going on right now, which is suggesting that we want to compare to the previous recessions, but not necessarily see within that all of that in isolation. And the reason I say this is, and this slide lays out very clearly for you, since last time, 2009, there is 150% growth in online business. Online was non-existent that time the way we know it right now. Food service had grown almost 70%. All these things, the way we were 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 20 years ago, is no longer the same. We are in a new context. And if you see the numbers here, we have doubled on almost every element, every channel, every area. So it's not apples to apples, which is why we have to look at more data, bring some experts who can help you out, and drive the strategy from there. So the key element, key takeaway from this one. And as you further dive into it, you start also seeing elements that will shape our thinking right now. During the recession, during 2009, 2008, the value brands, mid-tier brands, are far more successful than the premium brand. And you don't have to be a sophisticated economist to say why this was happening. But these are the facts in front of you. When you go towards what was convincing people to take action in the store, what was making them decide, you will see that the folks who were promoting in-store a lot more were actually getting a lot more traction. So here there is a nice economic story that is emerging where any brand or company that leaned forward and helped out got the benefit from that. Again, like we are continuing on there on that path. Economics matters, and recession is the definition of economic pressure. When you ask the questions around, are you buying the same kind of brands? Are you spending the same amount of money? You will see that that a certain segment of the population is reacting different to it. Affluent folks over a certain income level seem to be kind of not getting pressured as much as the folks who are on the other side of it. So you'll see that that particular piece dominated during recession. But what was also happening at the same time is there was this longing for something normal, something that is natural to humans to feel connected to certain elements. So here I have just a snapshot of two segments, chocolate and ice cream. And those two segments did actually pretty well during that time. There is some little bit color even within it, where premium chocolate did much better than the non-premium. But value ice cream actually did much better than the premium ice cream. Again, this was then. I'm talking about 10, 15 years ago. So it's a kind of a key element to understand that there is the desire to feel some normalcy despite of the economic pressure, and we can't ignore that fact. Here again, just continuing on the path of my comment earlier, that the role of private label, the role of store brand fundamentally shifted 10 years ago. The attractiveness to store brand and private label just exponentially went up, not just because, yes, I need to scale down on my spending, I need to control my budget and so on and so forth, but more about also that a lot of folks got exposed to these brands for the first time, and they liked it. They liked what they saw, and they appreciated what they were consuming. So it's not that they were compromising on their expectation. It's just that they tried it more and they seemed to like it. And there's a proof point in front of you in almost all segment. Store brand and private label accelerated. And you also see some stories emerging even at certain retail levels. This is a snapshot from 10 years ago, and it basically lays out that any retailers who played a much more localized focused over servicing their clients did actually very well. And of course, I don't have Walmart here because Walmart didn't share their data at that time, but Walmart is its own entity, and it shaped a lot of behavior. We also have Dollar General and dollar stores that accelerated during that time. So any retailers who was understanding the local needs, who was trying to put planograms or even in-store executions more in line with their regional elements, ended up actually outpacing any a national chain in just pure performance. Right. So what are we seeing now? So I mentioned this whole story regarding recessions and so on and so forth. So what is happening now? Well, here today we are sitting with on a challenge that is trifold, and I like to call it this is a story of life, lifestyle, and livelihood. Never before we had a risk at our health. Never before we worried about how our lifestyle is going to be, and never before we worried about how I'm going to be economically, as an economic entity, financially stable. All this is happening at the same time, and which is why it is important to break these things into different pieces and understand how people behave in each time, and then bring solutions that are in line with that. Marcia, you have a comment on the slide as well, right?
Yes, thank you very much. This is the first social media pandemic ever. We've had lots of pandemics before, but this is the first one that's been, every single inch of this pandemic has been covered multiple ways. So that's the big difference from the past. So it's not the fact that it's bigger. It's certainly not the biggest pandemic. It's not the most deadly pandemic, but it's the most omnipresent pandemic, and that's something that we're keeping an eye on. One of the biggest challenges is the need for physical distancing, and we're going to hear a lot about this going forward because by nature we are human and love to have human contact with other people, and this is really hard for us. So this whole idea of having to social distance or physically distance is really going to continue to be a challenge. We're also really stressed. We're picking up new habits. Now, some of these habits are old. If you go back to the Spanish flu, which is 1918, in the Spanish flu, there was social distancing. They shut down everything and everybody wore masks. But we do it better. We do it more often, and we struggle with it more, it seems, at the same time. One thing I've been seeing, though, is that acts of kindness from manufacturers will be repaid because customers or consumers or people, that's us, like to know that other people are looking out for us, and that's something that's really being emphasized.
Thank you, Marcy.
Turn it back to you.
The last point is actually very, very important. The role of empathy is going to play be important. How we talk to your shoppers, how we talk to your consumers, and for me as a supplier, how I actually understand you as a manufacturer. The level of empathy has to be high. And again, here, I don't want to dramatize it too much, but the point I want to make from this particular piece of information is that we no longer can say that we are not a connected world. We cannot say that, okay, it's that industry that is actually suffering. It's not touching me, so I don't have to worry about it. No, you can't think about that anymore. Almost all industries are interconnected in some way or the other, and you see it here. A lot of these industries are interconnected, and they suffered. These are dramatic numbers that tells you that things actually fell off the cliff rather quickly. There was no warning sign on this one. And the reason it happened at that dramatic level is because the interconnectivity which we have with each other. And my spending power is directly related to what I make, but also more importantly, how my company is doing. Oh, but if my customers don't buy my things, then how am I going to be successful? Plus the supplier of the suppliers. So this whole interconnectivity is right in front of us. And I hope if there is one thing that we take away from this particular session, or particular recession, is the interdependency that we have upon each other. It's a very important point to understand. And here, this is a session that is US centric, but I have some numbers right in front of you that talks about what's happening globally. There are the ones that are in orange or red that you see is non-food, and the rest all are food related. And you'll see there are certain categories are really driving performance at retail, but it actually tells us how consumers are reacting to these things. This number is the most recent number. They have not changed much. In fact, they were a lot more higher a couple of weeks ago when we were tracking what was happening a month back. So we are coming back to you and showing this piece that's telling you, like, wow, the story continues. There are certain segments still resonates with the consumers. They are selling like hotcakes, literally and figuratively. But at the same time, you see a very beautiful picture emerging on products that are very much suggesting that I want to take action. I want to take control over what I consume, and you will see traces of ingredients that you need to cook at home doing well, traces of ice cream, chocolate, and things like that, confection. All these things are showing more attractiveness because I need some normalcy. But what this slide also tells you, and we will send this deck to you, by the way, it also tells you is that how the trajectory is going. So China went first, but the recovery was also fairly fast. We know what's happening in China. I have that information. But the dramatics of the virus started shaping in Europe. The Italians faced it first, the French, German, of course, United Kingdom. So here is kind of a nice little trajectory of who went first and how they are actually performing. And I would like to bring this number to you again next month as a refresher. And see how they are moving, and then where US is. And is US going to follow some of the behaviors from other nations and other regions? So this is kind of a key takeaway too, because we already see signs here. We already see some of the things that are growing triple digits. We didn't expect that 3 months ago. These categories were not growing at triple digits, but they are now, and that's the normal that we talk about. Right. Here again, when we ask folks about what is truly your wish for when things get better, it all depends on what they actually respond to, how they feel about the trauma of getting infected. So it really spiked in April, the first couple of weeks of it. And now we are seeing a little bit of settling. People are saying, okay, I feel a little confident. I'm not sure how much of information they have while responding to it, but it is suggesting that the fear of the virus, the infection, is going to drive a lot of the behaviors. And then when you say, okay, what is it that you're looking forward to? Going back to restaurants. That response have not changed. I have some numbers even from before this time, and it is like, I want to go out. I'm a social animal, and I want to be with that, and I want to enjoy different foods and have the company of people that I like with, so on and so forth. But we'll see how that plays out. However, going back to a normal shopping routine is actually showing a negative trend. That is suggesting is that people are going to permanently change some of their shopping behavior, how they shop, the way they shop, and I will share more information with you. Right. Here, I want to equate back to something that I shared with earlier regarding the economic structure of our economy, financial structure of it. You'll see there is a clear picture emerging between the affluent group and the other. Where the behavior is projected by a group that is sophisticated in their, they are confident in their spending and future, are showing a different behavior versus the folks who are struggling. And this whole idea about paycheck management was very prevalent. One of the very big highlight of shopper management, in-store management, things like that, and we have to think about those things too as we move out of the current circumstances. And some of the positives that we are seeing here is coming from the behavior change. These are actual numbers of folks that are acquired, new people who have entered a segment. Around 4 million came to the frozen entree brand. New people who have never bought this before, at least not in the last 1 year. You have around 6.7 folks looking for soup brands, box pasta, paper goods, you name it. These are all new folks joining your brands and your category. The challenge here becomes is that what are you going to do to keep them there? What are we going to do to make sure that they don't go back to whatever they were doing before? Because we have them here. think about the same way when I mentioned earlier, private label and store brand, they were not that powerful at the time, but once they experienced it, what happened? Well, see the same way too. You have people using you, infrequently using you, but now using you frequently. This is the count that I have right now. You can't lose these people. You have to keep them in your category and segment. Let's keep out of it. One of the other things that is also happening, which is around the line of offline. So online element of this particular pandemic, and I know Marcia has a comment on this one too, but it's been the dominant factor. The folks who are not entertaining online shopping, online grocery shopping, or even curbside are actually doing it right now. And a whole bunch of them are loving it. So don't expect that to actually change back to the default of January. Marcia, you have a comment here?
Sure, thank you. The only comment is a sort of caveat. When I see this, I get a bit nervous because, yes, online grocery has increased dramatically because we can't go out, so we're ordering online. But we forget about the huge parts of the country with limited bandwidth, no internet, little internet, no access to this type of a shopping channel or limited access. And if we're going to keep people online shopping, we've got to get more people online. And that's one thing we're looking forward to. There are whole parts of the country with food deserts where there's no access to any food. And online shopping could help them a lot if we can at least get them the bandwidth to do it. So that was just my warning comment to this slide, Mitten. Thank you.
Yeah, and again, this goes back to a connectivity. You see a common thread here is that we'll have to look at this entire scenario as a post-COVID scenario within the angle of a life, livelihood, and lifestyle. We have to accommodate that three L's in your strategy as you move forward. And again, there's some more data around this online offline thing. This is one of our primary research that we're doing at Sensient, and this number at the bottom around will continue to purchase from this channel in future. That number was I don't have the pre-number because we started once the COVID scenario started, the epidemic started. But this number of 36 to 40 has actually not gone down. It is hovering at the same spot. That tells me that some of the behaviors are going to be almost permanent. So, but this is something to remember. We're also finding almost 13% of buying is happening online. Groceries, curbside pickup has picked up. But there is also some very important element emerging, is a clear perspective that I'm finding things that I'm buying online expensive. Now, this could be the nature of the business where they're buying some things that are in short supply or so on and so forth. But that particular perspective is taking hold, is that if I'm doing something online, I think I'll be paying more. So here I want to say is that the curbside or in-store shopping is as important as online. Because once this idea takes hold that I'm paying more than I should somewhere and I could get something cheaper somewhere else, it's very hard to get rid of. Thinking what I said earlier, the economic situations dictate a lot of things that we do. So it's important to know the pluses and minuses of both these elements. And here again, like, I referred to it earlier in the recession time, is that there are some categories were really helping people normalize their behavior, normalize their lives in certain way. And I didn't want to overuse the word staycation, but I'm going to use it for the first time right now. The element of staycation becomes very important. And what do we want during that time is that some kind of homeliness, some level of comfort. And that comes from categories that that you and I actually grew up with: ice cream, chocolate, good cookies, and so on and so forth. So you see those kind of elements going higher. This is the most recent survey that I just did just last week, most recent number that I have here. And you see an upward trajectory on some of these things. But that is not coming at the cost of other segments not selling. They have stayed actually flat. So there is a new dynamic emerging, and here I have some quotes from some numbers from Global as well around what is the role chocolates and biscuits and things like that play in people's lives to complement the part of some normalcy that we need as we go forward. And the stuff that I mentioned earlier during recession about private label, well, that same thing is playing out right now, but just more exaggerated. You remember the context that I mentioned. The entire industry was half the size 10, 12 years ago. So now all of that has got amplified. So you see here as a proof point right now, the most recent data, private labels and store brands doing very well, growing at a faster rate. But what you're also seeing, major brands are able to hold their ground and in fact even grow faster. So it's important to understand that the brands we trust plays an equal part in how your strategy is getting shaped in your businesses. And the number that I want to bring in front of you, highlight here, is the element of my experience with this brand hasn't been good. Well, that is the indicator that people are quite happy with what they're doing, right? And of course, I'm tracking this week after week, and I will bring you more, an updated version a month from now, somewhat similar. Okay, and playing along that whole element of normalcy, playing along the element of health, and being able to control my spending and so on and so forth. But what we are seeing is something where there is a significant increase in preparing meal at home. And you see it here. The question basically is like, what percentage of meal did you prepare at home? 2 months ago, it was hovering at 24% or something like that. Right now, you're seeing that that particular the percentage of meals that you do at home has gone up to almost 58 to 60%. So that's telling also something important, is that our consumers are balancing. They are, of course, eating out. They are ordering a lot of food from out, but they are also cooking at home, which leads to some very interesting data points here. This whole element of eating at home more often versus restaurant is up by 60 to 63%. It was 32 3 weeks ago. There is a mixed picture emerging between takeout and delivery and things like that, primarily because we saw a spike in takeouts. Spike in takeout in the early half of the pandemic time frame. But now we are seeing some settling in where people are going back to cooking at home. But then again, the spike came back because, wow, I can only cook so much in the house, right? So you have those kind of ups and downs happening that is suggesting that consumers are adjusting to the new reality, which means they're getting exposed to different foods, different type of foods. They're cooking from scratch. Even some flavor profiles are actually changing to something much more exotic than they did before. They're trying new things. Right, and here I have some comments around what's happened at home. I showed this to you all a few weeks ago when we did a presentation on social media behavior, and this is a side slide from there. You're seeing an upward momentum in almost everything that relates to consumption. People want food that comfort them. They want healthy. They want clean food, organic, things like that. Something that actually protects them from any potential scars of the virus. And here I do want to highlight immunity a lot more. Just today morning, I heard the news that vitamin C related products, primarily orange juice, is up by 20%. And there is some kind of a shortage when just 2 weeks ago we were hearing about people throwing away all their harvest. So it's kind of this new scenario where new habits and new consumption patterns are suggesting that we will be looking to a consumer whose taste profile, whose needs and wants are a little bit different, at least in a short period of time, as we get out of this particular pandemic. Okay, and here, just to emphasize more around immunity. Well, this is a literal phrase I will use. Let's Google it, and you see the spike here. And here, I believe the reason that spike is that high is a couple of reasons. One is that I want to protect myself and keep my body healthy. But also, if I'm recovering, I need a different type of meal, different type of foods to keep my immunity intact. So here you go. You Google it, and that's what we have in front of you. That is actually happening. So I think the element of food is really shifting in multiple different directions. I want to bring that in front as well as a data point. Right? What next? And here I want to spend a little bit more time in terms of going back to the 10 scenarios we went through, and we'll go through some of it independently and what are the implications of it. Right. So before we go any further, you've seen some of these implications. I just showed it to you. You've seen the scenarios here. Here I have another quick poll, because I don't want to talk to you. I want to think with you. And here's a poll that is giving you a list of those 10 scenarios. Please tell us what matters most to you. You can pick any number you want, and you'll also have to scroll down to pick the full 10 to see the whole 10 list. Okay, so I'm going to give you full 1 minute on this one to give your thought to us. 1 second. Hold on. Good. Let's look at some results real quick. I see immunity. Well, that might be a little bit biased as well, so excuse me for that, because I was just talking about it. You have inspired eating at home, doing very well. Affordable indulgence, right? So you see some of these elements and those are the things that is the business that we are in. We're in the business of delivering on this expectation on the food and beverage side of it. So thank you for taking the poll. And I hope you can see it here real quick. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Right. So hold on. One second, okay. All right, good. So we're going to go through some of it here. Talk about affordable indulgence. That is enough perspective right now, and I've shared some of it to you, that there will be some economic pressure, financial pressure on our consumers, our shopper in the industry in general. We need to take that into account. We know that there will be a cautious element towards how much I spend, where I spend, what is it that I really need versus want, things like that. You're going to see that particular piece. But you'll also see a need for enjoyment, a need for normalcy. And I highlighted some of that one before. So laying that out as the key part of it, and I don't want to recite the same thing again. But in terms of the implication, it is very important that some of the key categories, if you are in those categories, you take a closer look at it and see if there is any rejuvenation needed in those segments to get the consumers who are potentially new to those categories, keep them there and deliver on the satisfaction that they need. QSR, for example, the perspective here is that they might not be able to run the business as usual. They will have to expand their menu into something that is unique and different. The consumers were already ready for it before even the COVID scenario. They were always ready for it, trying new things. They might have to speed up that particular effort. More importantly, marketing and product application sides of your team, you have to really start thinking about beyond basic. Yes, the frozen meal menu that I had a year ago, as I consume more, I need to bring in things that are a little bit much more exotic, much more global in nature, so on and so forth. So these fundamental habits of like keeping things at normal, you might want to pressure test that, including the element of limited time offering to keep those consumers excited in the long run. Inspired eating. Here again, I was talking about cooking at home and all the things that folks are trying. It is fundamentally taking them towards an area of health, about taking care of your body, things like that, and from meal kits to just the overall preparation of foods is going to get heightened awareness and scrutiny. And with that comes idea of, is this product clean? Is this something that is good for my body? Is it artificial or natural? So on and so forth. And I think those are the things that will require some heightened understanding about your own products, so that you line up well with the consumers who are expecting something much more. Speed to market. Right now things looks a little quieter. But once they all start coming to the store, you already started seeing some states opening, and people have flocked to the bars. Whether they follow the social distances or not is a different issue, but there is this hunger to try different things, try new things. So you might want to just pressure test your own stage gate process when it comes to bringing new items to life. Is there a requirement of speed? Is there a need to even challenge your stage gate? But more importantly, are your suppliers ready to help you in times like this to accelerate those particular requirements? Are they ready? You might be ready. If they are not, then it does not work out, right? So it's important that you pressure test your suppliers on this one too. That's the takeaway on that one. And we do see there will be a supply chain and pricing issue, primarily because how the pandemic has evolved. It started China. China is recovering slowly, but not there fully. Europe now here. Africa will be next. All the stories are emerging. So it's not that we're going to turn the switch on and everything goes back to normal. Each state, each region will have to come back to normalcy at their pace that is right for them, which basically means that you don't have universal access to everything. So make sure that your suppliers have a second source and a third source to accommodate this thing, to actually be in line with you and in your plants and factories with their raw material for you to make the finished good. It's very important. But with that also comes several things, because when there is a shortage or tightening of raw materials, you see there is a pressure on pricing. But here I'm actually talking about pricing even at retail, because all of that flows through. And we've got to think about those parts. And the last part on this one would be a regulatory environment. If you're looking for a new supplier, a new ingredient, and so on and so forth, you better have the paperwork together. And that's a key part of it, because you might be buying stuff from someone who never you bought from. Is there other new entity aware and has all the access to documentation that goes with the things they're giving you? So here I'm trying to also combine not only the outward facing element of consumer need, but also how you all who are on this call, who are responsible for building, creating these products, are aware of those things. So the high level implications are actually boiling it down to some of these key elements that I just mentioned right now. You have to be aware of those things. The next, the e-commerce, we spoke about this quite a bit on that one. I don't want to say this is my favorite, but it is becoming my favorite in the sense where my own habits have changed. Almost everything that comes to my house is done just through online, right? And I'm not saying that I'm going to do more any more than what I do right now, but definitely not doing anything less. So here you have retailers now competing with this online environment, and these are two different shopping experiences. Your expectation in store are different than when you shop online. right? I sometimes believe that the choice has already been made for me when I'm online. When I'm in the store, I have this option to browse and pick and choose. So there is this element that you'll have to understand. Traditional channels will have to really entice the customers to step up. Traditional channel, the consumers will really push the providers, the manufacturers, to step up to the game and to this challenge. And I will not be surprised if there are some new brands created, maybe even in your product line, that exclusively exist online. I won't be surprised by that if that happens. Here, the interesting part of the story here is that during SARS in China, Alibaba and Baidu won big during that time. China was going towards more online behavior, but that basically just accelerated. And it changed how the Chinese actually shop and behave online. Going back to the whole food elements of it around made local, here I'm talking about two things. There is a little bit of nationalistic element there to think about. If a nation or a country is recovering, there is element of pride in buying the things that they need, and you see it loud and clear over here, where you will be more affectionate to think that is made in the region where it is in. So made in US, you're made in China, or things like that. I'm sorry, my dog is making that sound. So you have to be wary of that piece. So your manufacturers have to be able to give you the source that is needed to help you with that. Made local also has a bigger story here is health. And am I supporting my environment? And am I sustainable? So on and so forth. So that also kind of get bundles in here. So you want to make sure that that the folks you're working with have what they need to help you create the product that is meaningful for your region in that sense. Again, on the side of it, I have already spoken about retail brands and the growth that we're going to experience in that. This is probably one of my top ones in this entire 10. We're going to see a continued shift towards the power of retail and the power of retail brands. And here, some retailers might be at a new spot in their product cycle. How are they going to accelerate it? You need to have folks around you who can make it do faster for you, who can bring some speed into your execution, who knows what consumers want and how their taste profiles are. You can't create product in isolation. So you need folks and suppliers and partners that you have who can bring all these things together. And here it is. You need the skills from marketing. You need the skills from product development. You need the skills from just general understanding about the taste profile. And I hope that you are in the company of those folks who actually help you there. If you are not, you have Sensient. I will be more than happy to be your partner and help you in that particular endeavor in a much more passionate way. Personal care and that heals. Most of the folks on these calls are on the food and beverage side of the world, but this is something that is going to drive thought process for how, in general, we are accommodating health. So what you put on our body and what you ingest inside, they are almost the same eventually. So those items are going to get a lot of scrutiny, which is where you'll also see a lot of clean, natural claims coming to life. And we're seeing already a heightened request for items that are giving that assurance to the consumer that I'm clean, I'm healthy, and so on and so forth. And the last two here, we spoke about immunity quite a bit, and I saw you all give the highest score on the immunity. This is important. The products that we consume better make me feel good, but it also has some unique challenges. Not everything that is healthy actually tastes good. So how are you going to balance that out? You need all the sophistication of technology, all the sophistication and flavor profiles that make sense to the consumer, but at the same time assures them that it is good for you. You will have to reevaluate those pieces, at least in the near term. I do believe there is a counter force against it, which is, are this product more expensive than normal? Yes, they would be. So you have to think about those pieces too. So how do you combine those two things and create a proposition or a positioning of your product that accommodates both the pressure on the economics, but also the desire to stay healthy. And lastly, we are all dealing with this thing right now. Any organization that is not following some of these criterias, safe criterias, whether it is in their own plants or in their supply stream, is going to pay a price. You shut down. So make sure that the folks that you're surrounding yourself with are keeping themselves safe. And I'm proud of what Sensient has done here, where we have kept the business running and at the same time made sure that everybody is safe and we are protecting them. So that's a key element of this entire piece. So this was the top 10 that I want to go through. I want to give at least the next 4 or 5 minutes to questions. But the parting thoughts here for you is this is going to accelerate very quickly. It's going to speed up. If you are prepared, I'm sure your consumers will embrace you. If you're not, there will be some trouble. Have an empathetic attitude towards what you're doing, embrace what's going on, and have a solution mindset. But more importantly, I hope you're surrounding yourself with suppliers who are understanding the same thing that I'm saying, who understand the consumers as well as they understand you, who are not going to compromise on what is that the consumers want, what is the value of being fast, but also not compromising on quality. But at the same time, personally, am I, as Sensient, bringing a passion, this whole element, a singular mindset that I want to be part of this solution. I want to do something about it. And at least from my personal angle, I'm committed to it. So at this point, I would like to take some questions. All right, we're going to give a minute for things to flow in. Let's start with this one. Of the 10, what are our top 3? Marcia, you want to go first?
Oh, heavens, Min. I really think we have to emphasize sanitation and cleanliness through everything we do. I think that's a really important point. Oh, I'll put myself back on. Hello. I think we have to really focus on cleanliness. The more I read, the more I see that as other businesses come back online, they're emphasizing sanitation and cleanliness above and beyond what we ever thought we'd see before. That's one that's really important. Another one, I don't have the whole list of 10 in front of me, but we have to remember that consumers, we're all consumers, and we're all looking for understanding. And any one of these scenarios that focuses on making sure that we are all taken care of is going to be important.
Yeah, I think but my top 3 would be definitely affordable indulgence. Consumers do not compromise on their taste needs. They will have an expectation around how things taste. So that's one of the 3. They always do, right?
They always do. I mean, if you go back for years and years, every single question we've ever asked at Mintel about any specific product, the top reason for choosing the product is taste. I mean, face it, you don't want to eat something that doesn't taste good. Taste is really driving most decisions in most categories.
Yeah. And then how you bring it quickly to the market, knowing where we are. So the speed to market is very important. You have to surround yourself with people who know what they're doing. Absolutely. Because you will be competing for share of mind, share of wallet, you name it, and it's important to have that urgency towards what you do. And then last but not least, I think the whole idea of online. It is kind of my, in the top 3 purely because it's going to challenge all of us to think about our business a little bit differently. Right from how my package looks all the way to what kind of promotion I want to give. It's going to be an environment where there are a lot of learning required, and of course I cannot. That's not my role to help you with those pieces. I can at least help you in terms of understanding what are the needs are and how people are processing their decision in terms of online behavior. So those will be my top three. Right.
I would just add to that, Mitten, for online. One of the big problems that everyone's going to face is the lack of sampling. I mean, sampling was always a big thing when you were in store to try something new. Having lost the ability to let consumers sample is something you really have to take into account. And how you're going to let them sample something new when they can't sample it.
Yes, absolutely. And everyone who is actually on this call have sampled before you launch everything. Right? So if you are sampling it, they want to sample it. It's the same thing.
Exactly. Exactly.
I have a question here. Do you predict the e-commerce sales of food products holding steady in the next 6 to 8 months? Also, any new innovation in e-commerce over the next year? There are quite a few things going on here in this question. In terms of predictability, I wish I had a crystal ball of how this is going to shape. But what we are seeing is that the early signs of people embracing online. Embracing. I mean, I'm sure a whole bunch of you had Zoom meetings and something around Zoom just to spend time with your loved ones outside any work-related stuff. So that whole familiarity, the whole barrier that people have that, oh, wow, I'm so overwhelmed by this whole e-commerce thing, that barrier has now gaps. People have gone through it successfully, which basically means that, that this could be sustainable in a way. In terms of new innovation, I want to emphasize what Marcy was saying earlier, is that how are you going to sample? How are you going to actually bring certain things to life in an online environment, something to really, really think about. But in terms of online new innovation, e-commerce, I'm not seeing anything that is radical. I think what's happening right now is that people are just getting familiar with what was already working, but they were not using it. So I expect that to stay there. Marcy?
I was also going to add that PepsiCo has just launched 2 online platforms, one for snacks and one for meals, mostly breakfast and lunch. If you haven't been to those platforms, it's worth taking a poke around to see what they're doing. For snacks, they're letting you choose individual bags. I mean, how many bags of Doritos do you want and how many flavors? You can go and select them and have them sent to your house. For the meals, they are bundling whole lines of products together, like all the breakfast foods you could need from them all in one box. So that's a whole new way that a manufacturer is getting straight into online. We're going straight to consumer with an online platform from a manufacturer with no stopping in between for Amazon or a retailer to have a hand in it. So I thought that was really fascinating that major retailers are actually jumping on the online bandwagon finally.
Okay, we are over our time, but I think we can take one more question if you all are with us. This one last one. How global companies will face the local market trends. Here I would like to say is that you have to think globally while you're executing your product execution. But when you're launching it, you have to bring it as close as possible to the regional element of it, right? So that is very important. It is not like everybody is going to look for, give me something that is always made in USA or made in Germany or whatever it is. I think it's more about knowing where things are coming from. Are they coming from places that matter to you? And is the product near and dear to you? Now, you can say where it is made from, but if it's not following what your needs are, if let's say you are in India and you're talking about beef flavored chips or something like that, that's not going